by themselves, declaring themselves among themselves are not wise. But we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure of the rule which God hath distributed to us, the measure to reach even unto you.
For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reached not unto you. For we are come as far as to you also in preaching the gospel of Christ.
One more verse, Betty.
Not boasting of things without our measures, that is, of other men's labors, but having hope and your faith is increased, that we shall be enlarged by you according to our rule abundantly.
So as to preach the gospel even to the regions beyond you, and not to boast in what has been accomplished in the spirit of another. He who boasts, let him boast in the Lord. For not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends.
Okay. Now you notice in this context, right off the bat, he's talking about they. We've been discussing those people in verse 12, but they measure themselves by themselves, as he talked about within that. Though they are the people that Paul was dealing with in the first part of this chapter and previous chapters, those that had falsely accused him, and he's on full attack mode. I like what Paul's doing there. I mean, he's not going to let this slide. You're going to accuse me of things. I'm telling you that's wrong. And not only that, I'm going to tell you what they're doing. You see, it's one thing to defend yourself and say, well, I don't act that way. I didn't do that, and I'm not like that. However, they're like that. Here's what they're doing. See, you want to open up the Corinthians' eyes to the way I am, but you know what, folks? If we have a bad seed here that's attacking some member, and that member is just going to say, well, those things are not so, does that take care of all the problem? No, you still have the bad seed that now you have to see them for what they're worth. You know, and that's what you have to learn, and that's what I love about studying the Word of God. It gives us great insight of how to deal with problems, and you really have not solved the problem by getting up there and say, well, no, I didn't do it. Well, then somebody's done something, somebody's falsely accused, somebody's a liar, somebody's creating havoc here. We need to deal with that. Warren.
Yeah. I've seen it over the years. All it takes is one negative remark made by somebody or a group of people about you, and it sticks. It sticks. It's very difficult. That's what Paul's trying to do here. He's not only defending himself, he's defending the word. But when people hear things, I don't know what makes us that way, but we, as a people, we will have a tendency to believe something that's negative about someone versus saying, well, she is really a good, sweet person versus she is really not very nice.
I know it. And people have a tendency to believe everything they hear, Corinthian brethren included, you and I included. We got to watch against this. But I like what Paul's doing here. You can't, I've said this before, you can't stop people from telling lies, and you can't stop people from believing lies. But you can do the best that you can to prevent that from festering. And so it's kind of like what I've said. If any of you are ever charged as a child molester and you're innocent, if it's in the paper, what do people are going to think about you? If you're innocent. However, don't you see that if John Doe over here accused you of it and everybody's believing John Doe, but don't you think it would do some good for you if all of a sudden everybody knows that John Doe has done this to 50 other people and he was wrong about that and he's got some mental problems? Yeah, all of a sudden now that's going to help you, right? Paul, what he needs to do is, I'm going to tell you, and I did this in the first part of this chapter, I'm not like that. They're accusing me of being, mighty in words, but my presence, is weak. But when I come, I hope I'm not going to have to come with that boldness. I hope you're going to repent. I hope you're going to do what is right, and not listen to those people. And so what he does here now, beginning in verse 12, is he's going to basically tell them, look, I am not going to brag on things that I have nothing to do with. Let's look. Verse 12. We dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves, but they, measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. Listen, you wonder how frustrating it is for us to expose false doctrine today? If we have a denominational group, a religious group, and here they are, they're all assembled, okay, and they all believe the same false idea, okay, what do you think they're doing that's going to reinforce that what they believe is right? Yeah. How so? Expand. It's not rocket science here. How do you think they're going to get, hold on to even stronger in that false doctrine? What do you think they're doing? TJ?
Just as you can build each other up in Christ, you can build each other up in something that's not Christ. So the more you talk and the more you all want to feel better that what you're doing is right. So as you try to convince each other, you feel better about it.
Isn't that the truth? Hey, it's like, Fred, man, you're standing for what's right. So are you, Jim. Jim, you're standing for, and these guys are like going, can you imagine anybody out there that's saying that faith only is wrong? Yeah, isn't that silly? Yeah. And you're using each other as the standard. If you're all caught up in false doctrine and you're patting each other on the back, what becomes the standard? What's the standard?
Each other.
Each other. That's what Paul's saying here. Paul wants them to understand. His standard is what? Our standard is what?
God's word.
Yeah, there it is. It's God, and of course you're not going to separate his word, okay? He's trying to be on the up and up with these Corinthian brethren from the get-go. And he's been using that as a standard. We had a wonderful study last week of Paul talking about that very idea of our weapons. We're not walking according to the carnal warfare. We're just going to, how are we going to pull down strongholds? How are we going to stand against these guys? I'll tell you what we're not going to do. I'll tell you how we're not going to expose that. Is we're not going to get more people saying, we're bigger than you. We have more people that don't believe. I mean, look at the side, we're going to tell these people, you're wrong because look at how many of us think that's wrong. We're not going to do that. How are we going to expose them, guys? Yeah, just give them book, chapter, and verse. Just give them the truth. Because our standard is here. Here is our standard. It's not me. People are falsely accusing us, me, the apostles, teachers, those standing for what is right. Now, how do people today, how can we be guilty of this? Look what he says here. We don't want to class ourselves and compare ourselves with those who commend themselves. I don't want to act like that. But they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, they're just not wise. We know that's going on today, but look what he does in 13. I'll erase that question because we just answered it. We, however, as opposed to them. Folks, how can you stand for what is right without pointing the finger at error? How can you do that? Can you? Can you stand for what is right without pointing the finger at error, TJ?
I think so. I mean, I think you can focus on what's right. And like, if I'm having a conversation with you, I don't have to point out where you're wrong. I just have to point you out where I'm right.
And basically, what have you done?
Pointed out there, you're wrong.
You pointed out error. I know what you're saying, and but I'm trying to get you to see that with your statement right there is it proves the point. You can't stand for something without being against something. That's what got Jesus killed. Jesus loved everybody. If he'd kept his mouth shut, he'd been alive today. Well, back then.
It's kind of like you can't sit on the fence. You can't. There's not. It's either you're on one side or the other. You can't be like sitting on the fence.
Right. What did I just say here? Give me a statement. What did I just say here?
Truth.
Truth. Okay. What else did I say?
There's only one answer.
Isn't that what I said?
Wrong.
So what else am I saying? If I say there's only one answer, give me a negative. What am I saying? Like?
Well, it can't be five. the answer.
Yeah, am I actually coming out and saying 5 is wrong? Am I saying that here? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I want you to see that. Okay. The people out there are getting offended by it. Well, then you're saying, yes, what's that? It's like we want to run and hide. Well, are you trying to tell me that? I can't help but expose error when I stand for the truth. And if we're going to become loose in our thinking, it's like, I don't want to say you're wrong, but the answer is 4. Amy, try and teach. Can you teach like that? Can you tell the kids, well, I'm not saying you're wrong, but here's what I'm saying. Can you do that? Why not?
Because it leads to confusion as to what the right answer is.
That's it. Confusion. It's just, there's no black and white. There's no right and wrong. It's all gray. That's what people want. Paul doesn't do that. If we're going to learn anything from the apostle here in writing to the Corinthian brethren, is letting him know that, look, I am telling you that there is a standard. I am going to expose it. That's why I'm saying we, however, will not boast beyond measure. Paul, are you saying somebody has done that? Yes. Yes, I'm saying that. And I'm saying it's wrong. No, how many times have you guys been accused? You're judging me. You guys ever been accused? You're judging me. Not me per se, but somebody you've been talking with. It's not, or have you ever heard, it's not my place to judge? Can we tell somebody when they're wrong? How? There it is. That's all we're saying. Here's what the Bible teaches. We had that Friday night, didn't we, guys? And when that visitor from the neighborhood came and he departed, he said, well, Chuck, I just want you to know, I agreed with 90% of what you were talking. Well, that makes me feel good. 90%. You know what that 10% was? Error. And we had a really good discussion. For everybody who's there, I was quizzing everybody that night as they were leaving. Is there a rapture? No. Even the little kids, Mackenzie, I asked Mackenzie, is there a rapture? No. Because we had a thorough discussion of that Friday night, which was great for all of us. But you know what? We learned even from them, like we do all the time, you can't teach the truth without pointing the finger at Eric, because it just came up. Whoa, this isn't right. That sounds a little narrow. Truth is narrow. Never apologize for that, ever. Okay. I knew I'd be pumped up for this class. However, we will not boast beyond measure, but within the limits of the sphere which God appointed us, a sphere which especially includes you. What's Paul talking about here? I'm not going to boast, but what? Come on, guys.
Only for what the right is, what everybody believing in what God said.
So he's saying, is he saying here we can boast?
In God.
You can boast about things. Paul was proud of the brethren. You remember what was Paul boasting about these brethren? Earlier in our study. They had what did they remember? They stirred up other people to do what? To give. Yeah, Paul said, I talked about you. I boasted about you, and Paul was glad for the good things that they're doing. Paul talked about laboring with these brethren. When did this particular congregation start? Acts 18, verse 8. Okay? Acts 18:8. That's when many of the Corinthians, hearing and believed, were baptized. Okay? That's when that local congregation started. Who was preaching there? Is Paul like bragging on something that he had nothing to do with? You know, it'd be kind of like we have a man move into the area here. Let's just say Brian over here is a preacher. Let's say he's a preacher. He moves to the area and he writes to everybody about the work that he started here. You know, whoa, you just moved into town. He wouldn't do that. But my point is, Paul's not saying, you know, these teachers are falsely accusing him. It's trying to make him feel bad. He said, look, he says to them, we will not boast beyond measure, but within. Okay, I'm not going to go beyond, especially that which includes you. I'm talking about you, Corinthian brethren. For we are not overextending ourselves as though our authority did not extend to you. For it was to you that we came with the gospel of Christ. I like this. With all the problems that's going on here between them and now the them are the people that are causing problems with Paul. Okay? And Paul is dealing with the rest of the church here. So within them, Paul is addressing them as he's talking to the church here. And he wants the church to understand within all of this, as he's trying to help them understand about them and understand about him. What's going to help in all this is bring this into play. He keeps bringing this, Christ, into play. I preached the gospel to you. I mean, what did he have to tell the Galatian brethren in chapter 4, verse 16? Have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? He's telling you the truth. Is there a guarantee that the brethren at Corinth were going to listen to him? Was there a guarantee? So all Paul can do is just do the best he can. I told you before. 2 things. What is it? 2 things you can't control? There you go. I can't stop people from telling lies. I can't stop people from believing lies. And this is why Paul wrote this by inspiration. The Lord wanted him to provide this for you and I because people have not changed. You're going to find this. And I'm sure you've traveled around and experienced these kind of things, even within congregations. Jane?
To go with this, the main thing is we have to be careful what we say to whom. In other words, we have to think before we talk to people about anything. And we can't, one thing that we want to do is beat around the bush and not say the way it is in the right way so that people can understand it. Because if you beat around the bush, then they can take away from that maybe something that you didn't really, they got the wrong meaning.
Right. And I like that. And there's a lot of lessons, fundamental lessons that we're learning as a congregation. Let's just say that we're just like, we've never read this before. And we're just learning about the church that you read about in the scriptures and how we're supposed to be as the family of God. For me, if I'm reading this for the very first time, what I'm learning over here, listening to all of this going on, all this conversation, I'm thinking, if I do this, somebody's going to call my hand on. If I'm down here and I listen to people like that, somebody's going to call my hand on. Right? I mean, either way, Paul is telling everybody involved, you have a responsibility and your hand will be called on. You'll be dealt with it. You can't sit back and say, if there's a false teacher here, well, I'm just going to do my business. You get responsibility here. If I start teaching error, you got to speak up. Gene?
I've heard you say several times that you do not go talk to a lady or a woman by yourself.
Okay.
That's wise. Because, we can spend 50 years trying to live the Christian life and we can lose it.
Oh, yeah. A reputation that took you, your whole life to develop can be destroyed in just one moment of.
Same thing in a marriage.
Yes. Same thing. Same thing happens. And, you look at Paul's or Peter's life, you think a lot of times in his life, he'd throw in the towel and said, my reputation is ruined. I denied the Lord 3 times in front of people that I want to convert. Well, he he did an about face, didn't he? And he became an elder within a local congregation, which meant he had a good reputation. In other words, beware of that, but you can get it back, and don't quit. But I'm learning from all of this, our responsibility within this is because Paul is addressing the church about them and letting them know where he stands. Nobody is immune to being taught. Every one of us has a responsibility to know where we fit in all of this. We all need to be learning. We're all accountable within a local congregation. Every member of this body is accountable, just like every member of your physical body. You can't take a hammer and smash part of your body that you don't care too much for. You can't do it. Now, if you tell your hair and you hit it with a hammer, okay, that won't hurt. Hit your head, you might, but if you just hit your hair, it's not going to hurt. The point is, learn, brethren. I need to learn. Look what he says as he goes on here. Verse 15. Not boasting of things beyond measure, verse 15, that is, in other men's labors. Who does that? And why would they do that? Who would boast about somebody else's life? Guys, you're in the workforce. Surely you've experienced somebody else taking credit for something you've done. Anybody ever experienced that? Anybody? Who does that? What kind of person? This is what I'm trying to get to the heart of it. We're going to learn because they did it on the spiritual realm. Let's learn in the physical realm. Why would a person do that? Make themselves look better? Anything else? So why did they do it? Since they're not the ones that did it, why are they saying they did it? Okay. And now?
Well, sometimes it's because they were supposed to do it. They want the credit for having done what they were supposed to do.
Okay. Anything else? What about doing it because I really want to hurt somebody? I mean, obviously, they're not going to get credit for it. You know, somebody could lose their job over something you took credit for. You see, but no, I did. No, here's your walking papers. I don't want to hear your excuses. I only want to hear one side of it. I'm listening to the liar. He doesn't call him a liar. But it can happen, right? If somebody just wants to hurt you so bad, they want to take credit for something that you've done. And they're just, it exists today. Can it happen in the Lord's body? Of course it can. Somebody didn't mention another reason why somebody would do that, and Matt?
I think in the spiritual sense of things, this doesn't necessarily tie over into the physical application, but to make themselves feel better. Yeah. So, I mean, I think about if I have a conversation with somebody and I say, oh yeah, we do radio programs, we broadcast all our services, we do this, and this. That doesn't mean I'm taking part in any of it, but the fact that I'm a member here, I may be able to, look what we're doing, and I have nothing to do with that, but I'm trying to make myself feel better. I'm trying to make myself, like everybody else said, look better to everyone else, and just because everybody else here is doing it doesn't mean I am.
Right. It's a great illustration, Matt, to an extent, because I want to suck your sails out of you to build you up, because it is your work, okay? It is your work. But I mean, I really want you to feel good about that, but I understand.
Individually, I need to strive to take a part in that.
I get that. Because I don't want anybody here to feel bad, especially if they're not helping us, right, on the radio. But everybody does their little part. But you're right. And to build yourself up, what about, ask this, Matt, do you think jealousy would ever play a role? I mean, if I can get credit for something I didn't do, because I don't want him to get credit for it, I don't want her to get credit for it. It could be a pride thing. We can say, well, that person's just insecure. The point is, when Paul talks about this really happened. This is really happening out there, and Paul has to defend himself, saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to brag on somebody else's efforts. That's the way he put it here. Not boasting of things beyond measure, that is in another man's labor, but having hope that as your faith is increased, we shall be greatly enlarged by you in our sphere. Okay. Paul planted the seed, right? And people obeyed. So you had the church at Cornstarch. So as the church there increases in their faith, can Paul feel good about that? I mean, can he say I had a little role in that? Yeah, I think so. There's a little role in that. Anybody that's labored anywhere, I mean, you see that kind of thing. But I do see Paul's humility coming across in all of this. I mean, maybe word gets back where Paul may have said something in a positive sense like, well, yeah, I was there. I was a part of that work. You're not going to apologize for that. But you're noticing here how people can twist things to hurt others. Obviously, Paul was to be discredited by them. Why are they doing that? What can you tell me about them? Why are you spending so much time discrediting Paul? What's your problem? What can you tell, guys? You got to know some things about them already. What do you know about them?
He had control in the way that they want to see.
Control over who?
The church.
There's no question. We want you to listen to us. Listen to us. Don't listen to him. You know, of all people, you know, we're going to get next couple of chapters. They're actually going to come up. Those folks are going to say, he didn't even take your money. He didn't take your money. Oh, we'll take your money. But he didn't even take your money. Wow. It's amazing how people can twist things. The sad part about this, as much as those people bother me, you know who bothers me too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that terrible, man? I mean, because Paul, the things that he's saying, is he giving any of these people an excuse to believe these people? Not at all. There's no excuse. Now, he's defending himself, but you know what? There are times when people are quick to believe lies. The sad part is Paul labored with them. For how long? Over 3 years he labored with them. Don't you know Paul? Paul wasn't like this. Why are you believing this? And so, brethren, don't have a heart attack if you go somewhere and brethren act a certain way and you go, I can't believe that they would even do something like that. It happens. I'm not saying it's right, but don't quit on the Lord, because there are times when people do bad stuff, and it happens. There are people like them all over. We as a church have to guard against them. And how are we going to guard against them? How are you going to guard against them? Let's say this church here, right here, River Ridge Church. How are you going to guard against them? Dave, give me one.
By standing firm in the faith and in the Word of God.
Okay? How is she going to stand? How is she going to stand against them? Mallory?
You can fact check. Like, you can check their facts, make sure what they're saying.
Okay. There, I like that. And anything else? Warren? Okay.
You have to be able to confront those people.
Yeah.
They have to be approachable.
Yeah. And that's what he was talking about there. Or Matt was talking about the idea of check it out, verify it. You know, that really nips a lot of things. If anybody ever starts the gossip, anybody starts the bad mouthing to put anybody down, and they're telling you about that, you know, if somebody comes up to me and says, do you know what Kevin did last week? Hold on a second. Bill, I didn't want to label anybody here. So I'll say, hold on, Bill. Hey, Kevin, yeah, I got Bill right here. Bill, just checking it out. Man, you're going to say stuff. You should want Kevin to verify this. Verifying this, you know, that would nip it, right? So what's Bill going to do the next time he thinks he hears something about Kevin? Yeah, he's not coming to check. He's telling you to call. Well, let me get on this. Let me take care of this.
preacher that I obey the gospel under, he went a little bit further than you would. You know, when somebody come up and say, say this or that, and he had a pad, and he said, would you sign this?
I like that.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm not saying anything. Well, you said it. Now?
Well, it also would help if you actually know the people you go to church with. You'd be less likely to believe a lie if you actually know people. Like, I'm not going to believe what people say about Dan because, well, I live with him. So I know about him. So
Well, actually, Mal, even if he's guilty, what you're telling is you're going to give Dan the benefit of the doubt, right? You're going to give him the benefit of the
because
doubt.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think as we as the body of Christ, we give each other here, if I hear any trash about you, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt until we know otherwise. And we're not like going to ignore it because you're obviously going to want to hear it, right? You're going to want to hear about it. Listen, if you hear something, let me know about it. Let me know about it. Let's get to the bottom of this, okay? And that's what's going to help us. And you know what I was thinking when I asked that question? What's going to help me preventing them here is making sure that Chuck is not one of them.
I think also kind of tying into that though, we have a responsibility to safeguard ourselves where yes, we give the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, we can't assume that because we know them that this didn't happen.
Right.
I've seen that happen before where someone was spreading false teaching about what some elders believed, and I've known these elders for years.
Right.
And I knew it didn't sound like something they believed in. I really knew it wasn't something they believed in. Right. And had I just kind of let that go.
No. And I don't want to leave that impression, Matt. Thanks. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, you don't want to leave the impression that you're just going to let it slide. No, are you crazy? I didn't let that go. It's in the paper. Everybody else knows about it. No, I just don't believe it. There will be people who do that. You can give them all the facts, right? You can give people the facts, and they still won't believe it. They still won't believe it because they want to believe what they want. It's like the child molester. He wasn't even there. He was in another state. He has witnesses. No, I think he did it. I've seen him. Okay, fine. You can believe whatever you want, and that does happen. But yeah, man, you don't want to just sweep it under the carpet and ignore it, because Paul's not doing that. Paul is not ignoring this. These brethren needed to hear this. Let's understand this. This is the importance of Paul writing this letter was to help the brethren there, and here it is, 2,000 years later, it's helping us. We have to learn from that. Okay, we haven't finished this section yet. Yeah, I just read verse 16, to preach the gospel. Oh no, I guess I just read the end of verse 15. To preach the gospel in the regions beyond you, and not to boast in another man's sphere of accomplishment. But he who glories, let him glory in the Lord. I really like this. I don't know what's going on, but I have a pretty good idea that these people here were not doing what Paul's talking about. You can call me mud. Okay, let's just say you're right about all that stuff. Corinthian brethren, are they glorying in the Lord? Are they giving? No, it's all about them is the problem. It's all about them. And that's what's missing. You want people to glory in the Lord, give him the glory for everything. It's like, how many people you baptized? Who cares? I actually read a book one time where a preacher, the guy wrote a biography talking about this guy baptized, I don't know, thousands, but they had I'm just going to make the number up, but they had the number like 21,364 people he baptized in his lifetime. I'm thinking, what's the first thing I'm thinking? Who's keeping track? Who's keeping track? And why? Right? I mean, if somebody's baptized, how was that done? How was that accomplished? Through preaching the gospel. Is there power in the gospel? Yeah, Romans 1:16. When somebody's converted, it's power in the gospel. And we'll go from there. Morning, guys, just have a seat. We'll be done in 5 minutes. And so when we talk about the power in the gospel, And if we know there's power in the gospel, what does that prevent with you and me? What will that prevent within us? Boasting, the arrogance that is there. It actually might prevent us from not even doing anything because we think we might have to have all this wonderful teaching ability in order to reach people. Just preach the gospel. You say, Chuck, I've never done this before. You know what? You can get together like we were doing the other. We had people come to our home Friday night. We said, you know what? We're just going to start in the book of Acts. We're just going to start reading. And we're just starting reading. We're just studying together. There's power in here. And it's not power within me. An eloquent speaker. Paul, what did Paul say to the Corinthian brethren in the first letter? I did not what? I did not come to you in what? That's it. Chapter 3. I didn't come this way in chapter 2, preaching you. Just coming preaching Jesus Christ and Him crucified. We have a problem in the religious realm, don't we, folks? With people like them. What's the problem in the religious realm mostly with religious leaders of our day? What's the problem? We've been nailing it all morning. The elevation. Elevating them. Oh, I don't want to question them. Whatever they say, it's right. It's got to be right. I'm going to be a follower of them. You better do what I say. Give them a title. What's my name? What's my name? What are you going to call me? Where's my title? Haven't I earned it over 35 years? Who do you think you are, Chuck? Yeah, there you go. I'm elderly. Yeah, they want to puff themselves up because I want that title. I want that title because I'm somebody. And what happens within all of that is this what gets lost. The emphasis isn't on the word anymore. The emphasis is on man. And when that happens, we have the people that Paul's talking about here in 2 Corinthians 10. As we're finishing up this chapter, we'll start in chapter 11, Lord willing, next Sunday morning. Look how he finishes this chapter in verse 18. For not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends. Boy, you really wish people could get that point, right? To me, as I go through life, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Oh man, I gotta be careful how I put this. I'm gonna get in trouble if I'm married. I don't care if people love me, but who do I, in the physical realm, I'm not going to do it in a question form. I don't care what people think. As long as my wife loves me, that's important. Okay? I'm trying to put that in a question form, and I couldn't. Okay? Yeah. And so when you think about it, it really doesn't matter what other people think about you. Doesn't it matter what the Lord thinks? That's the bottom line within all of this. Now, somebody, like we had the other night, somebody can leave and say, you know what? I think the answer is 5. I personally don't care what you think. Yeah, but what we're telling them is what we think better be what the Lord says. So they can say, well, I disagree with you, Chuck, but it matters to me what the Lord thinks. Well, if you're telling them what the Lord says, you're telling them what the Lord thinks. You're saying, the Lord doesn't approve of this. Well, I don't care what you say. Well, that's why I don't want to say it. I just want to give them book, chapter, and verse. That's why we got to give them the word. The emphasis is on this because do not become followers of man. You've heard me. I'm a broken record in this pulpit. You need to ask questions. You need to clarify because there's too many man followers. And by the way, guys, just as throwing this out, food for thought. What is the origin? Quick question. The origin of every denomination. It's a 3-letter word. What's the origin of every denomination in the world? What's the origin?
Man.
Denomination.
Man.
Man. That's the origin. That's something to be proud of, right? Mm-hmm. What did Jesus come and establish? His church, his people, right? Follow him. The emphasis is here. And that's what's getting lost today. And Paul is trying to drive it home to these brethren. You can commend yourself. I grew a religious group and they're all teaching all those things. Yeah, you can pat yourselves on the back. You can jump up and down and have a party and you all feel good about believing the same wrong thing. Right? I mean, there are a lot of people like that out there. But commending yourself by yourself, that's not good. He says, you know what? You really don't need Chuck telling you you're okay. You don't want to leave it. Chuck says, I'm going to heaven. You need to say, who cares? what Chuck says. He says right here, whom the Lord commends. That's what's important. And how do you know what the Lord commends? If it isn't in here, you have no idea. And you don't want to go through life like, well, I feel the Lord's pretty pleased. That's like me coming home with a brand new set of golf clubs for Deb's birthday. I feel she's just going to love these. And you're like going, Chuck, she doesn't golf. Well, that's okay. You can feel all you want, but that's just, you're in another planet. And so you can feel, doesn't prove a thing. Emotions don't prove a thing, but truth does. Truth does. And that's why Paul is trying to get the brethren at Corinth here to say, don't compare yourselves amongst yourselves. And as far as that's concerned, I'm not even telling you, you don't believe you're right because I say it. You better believe you're right because the Lord said it. And that's why you have to study this. Our lives have to be in harmony with it. And that's what we're studying. Okay, any other thoughts or comments? We got another minute here. I could go into chapter 11. But I wouldn't do it justice. No, not even a comment about comparing ourselves amongst ourselves. It happens, right? And I'll tell you one thing, even in the workforce, you can have all the employees going, hey, thumbs up, but the boss comes around. If he's not pleased, that's what's more important. Doesn't matter if your coworker says you're doing a great job, Jim, but if your boss says you're not doing a good job, does it really matter what Jim says? It really doesn't matter. It matters what the Lord has to say. All right, that's okay, guys. We'll cut off a little bit there, and we'll pick up in chapter 11 next week. We got a few minutes to get ready before worship starts. Thanks for your comments. Shut up, Tom. Shut up. Are you going to do it? Did you switch with somebody? I'll get somebody.